I'm going to demonstrate a very simple Intarsia pattern. Intarsia is also called picture knitting. It's basically doing blocks or blobs of different colors. So I'm going to make a little square of a different color in the center here. I have 3 yarn sources. I have a small bobbin with my contrast color for my square. And I have my main color, which I've already started with here, and I have a second source of my main color to be on the opposite side of the square. Each chunk or blob of color is going to need its own yarn source. So I have 15 stitches cast on. I'm going to do 5 in my main color, and then we'll add the contrast color for 5 and add the second source of the main color for 5. Now on this very first instance of my contrast color, I like to tie it on. I do that pretty simply. Pass this underneath, cross it into a circle and pull the end through for a half knot of my new color that traps the old color on there. And I've got a lot of extra here, so I'm just going to wind a bit more of it back on my bobbin. And then I'm going to knit 5 stitches with my new contrast color. You can see it's a little awkward at first because I've got lots of stuff going on. That's going to get worse for a little bit, but I'll get used to it. So there's my 5. Now I need to add my second source of my main color for the other side of the background. And again, I'm just going to quickly tie it on here. Now before I continue, because I'm done with my contrast color here, I'm just going to wind it up on the bobbin a little bit more. Ideally this is pretty close to just dangles. And the point of this is so that you don't end up with all your yarn balls being balls of yarn and rolling around and tangling with each other. So here we go. I'm going to finish the row with my second source of my background color. Now, to do my next couple rows, I'm going to follow the colors as they are. So I'm making a square, which is a little simpler than making a heart or flower or something else, but the basic idea is the same. So starting with this yarn that's right here, I'm going to purl until it's time to change colors. I'm starting this with the yarn in my right hand or throwing, and I'll switch to having it in my left hand or picking in a moment. Now, I'm going to take a second just to detangle things, and it's very important that you interlock these yarns when you switch colors. If I just switch, then there'd be no connection for these rows. At this section, I'd get a hole, and eventually I get a slit if I keep doing it. So I'm going to wrap my contrast color underneath the color I'm going to use. I'm going to undo a little bit of this from the bobbin so I'll have enough yarn to work with. So you can see as I purl this stitch, the other color is caught. And that's what we want so that there's a connection. I might just give it just a little tug to make sure it's not too loose. And similarly, when I'm done with this color and ready to switch to my other main color over here, and get my tails out of the way, and I want to wrap this around so that as I work with this color, it's going to catch that contrast. If you forget once, probably not that big of a deal, but if you forget multiple times, you'll get quite a big hole or a slit opening, which probably is not what you want. There we go. So I'm going to switch to doing this with the yarn in my left hand for the next couple rows, just so you can see how the flow of it works for people who do that. And just every time that you're at the end of a row, it's not a bad idea to detangle your yarns. Neaten them up a bit. I just have a little split here, so I'm going to fix that real quick. Okay, 5 with this yarn. And then here, as I pick up this other one, I want to get the extra tails out of the way. There's a lot of yarn management here. And I'm going to pass this underneath the one that I just finished with. And I'm also just in the same motion going to free a little bit up from my bobbin. And the key here is that these are joined. You can see there's this little cross right there. Okay, so their tail out of the way. That cross, that's what you're looking for when we talk about interlocking. It isn't a knot, they're just wrapped around each other so that they can't totally separate. And I'll do that again here. So this is the yarn I want to use. and I'm going to bring it around so that it interlocks with the one that I just finished. You can see it is a little fiddly. There we go. Here's our interlocking that I want to have. So I tend to think of Intarsia as being a little old-fashioned and a little fussy. The act of doing it can be a bit fussy for sure, but the effect of it isn't necessarily old-fashioned looking in terms of aesthetics, and color blocking like this can be a great way to kind of modernize the technique. So here I am ready for this. I'm going to undo a bit from my bobbin, and I want to bring my new yarn I'm about to use under the old one. This one's now in my left hand ready to pick. I need to release just a bit more from my bobbin. It's kind of a balance that you don't want to have a whole lot of yarn loose, but you need enough. And then here, this is my yarn I'm going to use, and I want to bring it around so that I get this interlocking effect before I continue my row. Now on my next row, just to give this a bit of a frame, I'm going to go all the way across in my main color. So I don't have to do anything fancy at the changeovers because I'm not going to be changing colors. And in fact, if I was confident that it was time to do this and I'm not going to use these colors again soon, I could cut them. And that's one way that you can limit your yarn management, to make sure that you cut yarns when you're done with them, and even pause every once in a while to weave in the tails from where you started or finished a yarn. That can help it feel a little bit less overwhelming. Do one more row so you can see it better. I also like pausing periodically to weave in ends, just so that I don't end up with a whole lot of them to do when I'm finished knitting, because I don't always get around to that very fast. So if I weave them in as I go, especially if it's something I'm not going to block under tension like lace, then I actually get finished sooner. So here we go. So here's my Intarsia, and again we had 3 yarn sources, one for the color in the middle, but 2 for the background, so that you could have 3 yarn sources and get across the row. And here is the other side. So we still have here some working yarns that I'm done with. We have some tails from when I cut them on, tied them on at the beginning, but you can still see your pattern here on this side as well.